So we are off. I got about a 3-hour drive or so to get to my first destination. I'm not able to get in to pick up my race packet until about 5 p.m. So pretty much late this afternoon. I think it runs from 5 to 9 this evening. So I'm going to spend a little time just exploring Traverse City. It's been a while since I've been there. It's a gorgeous town. Absolutely love the time that I have spent there, and I'm looking forward to spending a little more there today. I'm on 127 going north. If you're familiar with Michigan, I'm just coming up on Mount Pleasant, so I still have a bit of a drive ahead of me. And thankfully, the rain has let up for now. It got pretty dicey there for a bit. It was coming down pretty hard. It was difficult to see. But right now, I've got dry roads, so I'm going to take advantage of that and just enjoy the rest of the trip. All right, onward and upward. We'll be there soon. So I arrived in the area right around noon on Friday. It wasn't too terrible of a drive, other than that little bit of rain that I mentioned earlier on. And I didn't have to stay in a hotel. I'm fortunate enough that my son and future daughter-in-law live in the area. So Holden and Sarah put me up for the weekend. They were very gracious hosts. I'm very appreciative for the opportunity to be able to stay at their place. They were very accommodating to me. And my son, Holden, is a professional golfer. He's on staff with Callaway. He's also a golf operations manager for Crystal Mountain, which is a premier resort in the area in northern Michigan, where you can ski in the winter and golf in the summer and everything from A to Z in between. So I highly recommend it. If you're in the area and you're looking for a place to stay and fun things to do, check out Crystal Mountain and check out HLP Golf. Holden has his own golf channel where he does a lot of tips and tricks and just helps you improve your game. So I encourage you that if you enjoy the game of golf, or maybe you just like to watch footage about golf, to go ahead and subscribe to his channel. I know he'd really appreciate it. He's getting close to that 1,000 mark for his YouTube channel for number of subscribers, so it'd really be terrific if we could help him get over that hump. So Holden and I had a really great time Friday afternoon just exploring Traverse City. He's much more familiar with the area than I am. Although I've been up there a few times, I really don't know it like the back of my hand like he does. So he took me around to some of the shops that he thought I might enjoy, including a running shop that we got to stop in and check out some of the gear that they had to offer. We also stopped in and just had a nice cold beer and a little white chicken chili. I know it sounds like it might have been something that you would have on a cooler day, but it was cold that day. In fact, that was one of the mistakes I made, is even though I'm from Michigan and I knew better, I didn't really pack well for the trip. All I had was like shorts and t-shirts, and it was cold. It was in the high 40s, low 50s, and with that breeze coming off the water, I had to borrow some warmer clothes from Holden. And fortunately, we're about the same size. He's a little taller than I am, but in terms of fit, his pants and that kind of thing. So I borrowed some running pants and a running jacket to put on. So he really kind of saved my bacon on that one and kept me warm for the time that I was there. Then later on in the day, we went and picked up my race packet. So he went with me, and that was kind of fun. We got to see where it was I was going to need to be in the morning. So that helped just reduce a little bit of that not knowing anxiety that you can get on race day. So I knew where I was going to go. I knew where I needed to be and where I could park. So that really helped me, just like I said, stay a little bit calmer and more focused on the race and less focused about, maybe not knowing where to go or how to find it. And we ended the day at Olive Garden, where I had a nice big plate of lasagna to help me keep fueled up for the next day. So I spent the evening just making sure I had everything organized and ready to go to the next day. I had gotten my bib number earlier that night, and so I pinned that onto my tank top that I was going to wear. But I had my run hat out. I had made sure that I had my music with me, so I took my iPod as well as some earbuds. I also had my Insta360 charged up. Now this is the One RS that I took with me to do all of the footage that I filmed for you that I'm sharing with you here today. I was wearing my Garmin Fenix 6 watch, one that I absolutely love. It does a tremendous job. I also had laid out 5 different gels. I ended up packing 4 with me for the race, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. And again, I was wearing a Brooks run top or a tank top, and then I had on the John G groundwork pants. I love those. They've got 4 different pockets up front, 2 on each side, and a big large pocket in the back, but they're super soft and really comfortable. The only thing that I should have done that I didn't do was to tie the drawstring just a little bit tighter, and I'll maybe talk about that here in a little bit too. And then I had on some Puma socks. These are socks that I have worn for a long time, for years and years. Never had any issue with them, so I didn't want to make any changes on race day, so I stuck with those. And then I wore the Nike Next Percent 2 for my race shoes. So it's race day. I'm in the parking lot. I'm ready to go get in line, get in the corral. Still got quite a ways before the actual start of the race. It's really cold out for this time of year anyway. It's still in the low 40s right now, so it's a little bit chilly, so it's going to be cold. It's just kind of standing around. So hopefully I'll be able to get warmed up and stay warmed up before the start of the race, so I'll be good to go. So on the way over to the corral, I did make a mistake that came back to haunt me later on down the road. And, it was so early in the morning, the grass was really heavy, wet, dew, and I was cutting across the grass to get to the start line from where I was. And unfortunately, my feet got soaked instantly. And later on down the road, about probably mile 12, 13, something like that, so about halfway through the race, I started to get a blister because my feet were so wet, my socks were wet, and it was just irritating my pinky toe. So I ran basically the second half of the race with a blister that was forming and starting to get pretty sore, but we powered through. But lesson learned, so the next time around, I'm going to make sure that I don't walk through the wet grass, or I have some dry socks with me that I can put on.
Good morning, runners! Welcome to the 40th running of the Bayshore Marathon. I am Allie Feller. I will be here with you all morning and all afternoon. I'll be the one welcoming you to your finish line. We are going to get our pre-race ceremony started in just a few minutes, because if you're checking the clock, it is 7:02. That means we are at 13 minutes until the start of our marathon. It is so good to see all of you. It has been more than 1,000 days since the last in-person running of the Bayshore Marathon.
For the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Happy Memorial Day weekend. Happy summer. Happy Bayshore.
Now, when the race started, I wasn't lined up where I wanted to be. Where I really wanted to be was with the 3:30 group, so 3 hours and 30 minutes to complete the marathon, which would basically be right around an 8-minute mile pace. I thought that was something that I could sustain, at least for the majority of the marathon anyway. So that's where I wanted to be, but that's not where I started. I couldn't make my way up to that group before the actual start of the marathon, so I ended up being back a little bit further. I was right next to the pacers for the 4-hour group. And when we got through that start line and it started to kind of widen out just a little bit, I took the opportunity to try to catch that group, but I really didn't catch up to them until about 2.5 miles into the marathon. And so I had to run a little bit faster just to catch them. But once I got to that 3:30 pace, those 3:30 pacers, there were 2 of them, I stuck to them like glue for pretty much the entire marathon. So I packed 4 gels with me, as I mentioned earlier, instead of 5. I had 1 in each pocket, and the rotation was going to be a Huma, a Goo Roctane, a Huma Plus that has double the electrolytes, followed by another Goo Roctane to finish out. And I was going to go 5 miles, 10 miles, 15, and 20. It didn't work out that way. I actually only ended up taking 3. And here's why. So I missed the 5-mile mark, and this is a bit of a rookie mistake. This was my first marathon, and so we do learn as we go. So I wasn't paying close of attention. I guess I was just more focused on trying to keep pace with the pacers. And before I knew it, we were already at mile 7. So I took the first one around mile 7, and then I took the second one when I made the turn. So this was truly an out and back, and it was a really tight corner coming around at the half marathon mark. So I took the second one just after that. And then I took the third one right around mile 18, 19, somewhere in that ballpark. And that was it. And in part because when I reached into my pocket, I was going to take another one right around mile 22. And I figured, help me get through to the end. But I went digging around in that pocket, and it had slipped down far enough that I couldn't actually find it when I was running, and I just figured to heck with it. I only had, another 4 miles to go, something like that. So I figured I was just going to go for it, just make sure that I stay hydrated, which I did. Also at that time, so it was really interesting, not having run a marathon before, you hear about hitting that wall at the 20-mile mark. Well, for me, in my experience with the group that I was with, and I was with a great group of runners for pretty much the entire marathon. There's a group of about 22, I think 24 of us or so that was just huddled around those two pacers right up until we got to mile 22. And then about 80% of the people kind of fell off, but about 20% went faster. So they got to that 22-mile mark and they just went for it. It was all I could do to make sure that I stuck with the pacers. So I was kind of laughing to myself because when we hit that 22-mile mark, I was it. I was the only person left in that group with those two pacers. So I kind of felt like I was being escorted into the finish line. So it was a lot of fun, and it was really interesting and a great learning experience for me. But when I talk about hitting the wall, that's real. I was really pushing hard, digging deep to try to stay with those pacers. So at that point, I was just happy to be there. And then when we got towards the finish line, I thanked the pacers, and I gave it everything I had to get across that finish line, just a little bit ahead of them. And my overall time, I could not be more pleased with it. It ended up being 3 hours, 27 minutes, 49.9 seconds. Now that may be good enough to be a Boston qualifier. So for a man my age, the qualifying time for Boston is 3 hours and 35 minutes. So I came in about 7 minutes and a few seconds faster than the qualifying time. And as we know, the Boston qualifying times are kind of written in pencil. So it really just depends on how fast the runners are who are applying to get in. But given that I came in about 7 minutes, a little over 7 minutes under the initial cut time, I'm hopeful that when I put in my application that I'm accepted to run Boston in April. So the pacers did an awesome job. We had two of them in our group, male and female, and they're just incredible athletes. They kept us on track. Now, my pace range was pretty narrow, pretty steady for the entire marathon. It ranged from a 7:54 up to an 8:03, but my average pace was right around a 7:55 minute mile. So kudos to the pacer for doing a wonderful job. So I'm a big fan of the Garmin training plans, as you probably know already, just for following this series. Now, while it wasn't the perfect training block for me because I did get injured so early on, first week in April, and I had to just do the best I could do to honor the intent of the workout. Doing speed work, for example, instead of running intervals, I had to get on my stationary bike and do some HIIT training that way. And now that I have a mountain climber and some other resources available to me going forward, I think I'm going to be able to do a little bit better job of trying to stay injury-free. The only mistake that I thought that I made in terms of the training or getting injured was I should have stopped running a little bit sooner. The minute that I realized that I was hurt, I should have stopped running and started doing the alternative types of workouts that I ended up doing anyway. But instead, I ran for an additional week, including an 18-mile long run on an ankle or with some shin splint issues going on that just made it worse and probably set my progress back a little bit. So going forward into the future for my next training block, I'm going to take that. That'll definitely be in my back of my mind. So if I do get injured, I'm going to hopefully recognize that and stop a little sooner and take advantage of some of the tools that I have at my disposal. Hopefully I won't get injured, but if I do, I've got some other alternatives that I can do, including the lever system that I picked up when using in this training block so that I could start running a little bit earlier, even though I still had some ankle issues and ultimately some shin splint issues. And along those lines, I didn't have any shin splint pain at all during this run. The only issue that I ended up having was about mile 18, mile 20, somewhere along those lines. My calves started to get really tight. So one of the things I was really looking forward to at the end of the race was just stretching those calves out and kind of loosen them back up again. And so much so that after I finished the race, I forgot to turn my Garmin off. So my Garmin time and the time that ultimately showed up on Strava isn't even close to my official time. Because I was just so focused on trying to stretch out, after the race had ended. So my next training block won't start until somewhere around the end of June because I'm going to be preparing to run the Detroit Marathon. I'm already registered for that. That's going to take place about mid-October. I think October 16th, but don't hold me to that. I'd have to look it up to be sure, but I think it's around mid-October. Hey, thanks for making it to the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed making it for you. As always, run tall, run strong, be kind to one another. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on Run Tall with Tim.